Wow, I can't believe it's actually a year since we were here last time, but it's amazing to see so many of you join us again today. Lots of lovely familiar faces, but for those of you that haven't yet come to one of our events, a particularly warm welcome to all of you. I'd like to also take the opportunity to thank our sponsors and partners, because without you, we wouldn't be able to make today happen, or even our network in its annual activities. So what I wanted to do was just talk a little bit about what we've actually been up to over the last 12 months, and actually look at where we are as an industry in terms of ED&I as well. So we've been out on the road. So historically, we do have quarterly meetings, for those of you that haven't been able to join one of them yet. We hold them typically in London, is what we historically did anyway, and also with a Teams opportunity to dial in. Because ultimately we wanted to involve as many people as possible, but we thought, why are we always having them in London? We're supposed to be inclusive. And actually, to be perfectly honest, none of us bloody live in London anymore anyway. So, so we thought, let's get out on the road. Because there are 5 of us that run this group, so Georgia being one of them, and we've got Steph, and we've got Shelley, and we've got lovely Catherine hovering by the door, welcoming the last few people in. And we do this on top of our very busy day jobs, which is not easy, I can tell you. But this year, we were actually delighted to be joined by an extra pair of hands, which is amazing, Lucia Jarvis from National Friendly. So that's been hugely helpful to us in putting on today's event. But we have we've upped our game, I think, because we have been out and about. So here's us in iPipeline's lovely offices in Cheltenham in September, which was great. And we followed that with a tour up north to lovely York. For those of you from Lincoln like me, our cathedral is slightly better, but that's a bit of controversy. But no, it was actually wonderful to be there. And what was really great as well is that we got to meet a lot of the Aviva team as well, and they've got lots of women's networks across their organisation. So it was really great to meet some of them and talk through some ideas about how they can actually enhance the support that they offer their female colleagues. In the middle, we were delighted to be invited by Cover to do one of their work streams at their Cover Summit event last year as well. So that was really wonderful and gave us exposure to even more people in the industry. And then the bottom middle, that was open work. They invited us along to one of their Women in Finance events, which was absolutely brilliant. And we've got Robin in the room, who kindly arranged that for us. And for us to be invited was a real privilege, because they don't invite external people. And it was brilliant to be in a room full of women, really excited to hear what people had to say, and really wanting to learn more about how they could actually develop their careers and how open work could support them. So that was actually really wonderful. So yeah, we've been out and about. Our next meeting at the beginning of June is going to be back in London, but in September, we're kind of going international. We're going to Cardiff, courtesy of Legal and General. So thank you very much to them. So hopefully you'll be able to join us at one of those meetings. We've also done something else a little bit different because, as I said, for the 6 of us to run the group now is still a bit of a challenge. So we wanted to create an ambassador role whereby people that have been really actively supporting us and who are really keen to improve diversity and inclusion in our market take more of an active role and really sort of work with the people that they work with day to day, within their colleagues, their organisations, but also to kind of spread the word with all the interactions that they have with their clients and partners. So I'd actually just like to take this opportunity for the ambassadors in the room just to stand up to say a big thank you, and also to highlight who they are, because they will be taking a bit of a role later today. You can all sit down now. Thank you very much. But thank you. It's great to have. We've got an odd number. We've got 19. So if anybody wants to be the 20th, let us know. So there have been a few sort of improvements. One of the key things about the network is that we want to try and improve outcomes for women that work alongside us in our market, but also to improve outcomes for female consumers and help support them, give them more access to insurance, and make sure that they've got more safety nets in place should anything happen. So the top 25 companies for women in 2023, that was a Forbes list. And what was really wonderful is that we had 4 companies from our own industry in that top 25. So top 25 for women across the world. And they were Swiss Re, MetLife, Aviva, and Zurich, which is brilliant to have 4 out of 25. So it just goes to show what is possible. So congratulations to those 4, and I know a lot of those people are in the room today. Flexible working. We've all seen real inroads in flexible working since the pandemic. So this is just one initiative that Unum have done to improve it. But this has also been a little bit controversial because you may have seen some other reports about flexible working perhaps being scaled back a bit since the pandemic. Now, what impact is actually going to have on women in particular? Flexible working helps both men and women, obviously, but certainly women. And for those companies that are perhaps forcing people back into work could actually pose more challenges for women. And actually, are they then going to be disadvantaged in their long-term career prospects? It's a question that really needs to be answered, and I think it's something just to be mindful of. Elder care service launched by Zurich in January. For those of you that have heard me speak before, I'm really keen on making sure that we do more in the market to actually help those that have actually got caring duties, particularly those that not necessarily their children, but actually their relatives, older relatives, their partners, their parents. So for me, the fact that Zurich have actually taken this step to offer that as part of their service to group scheme members is really, really good, because we know it can be really difficult to find care for loved ones. My mum is an occupational therapist by trade, well, she's retired now, but when she was, by profession. And I know that it was difficult for her to find care for my nana, but she actually knew what she was doing, and it was still not particularly easy. For those that have no experience whatsoever, those kind of services can make a world of difference. And because caring duties do fall far more on women than men, that obviously will help more female consumers. And then the bottom one, you might think, well, I've introduced Kellogg's, so nothing to do with financial services. But last year we had the Employees Initiative on Domestic Abuse join us, and we're a signatory of that because fewer than 10% of companies have got any domestic abuse policy in place to actually support employees. Now, whether that's financial abuse, mental abuse, or physical abuse, it's really important that we do more to help victims. So the Employees Initiative on Domestic Abuse is there to help companies. So if you haven't signed up, it's a free service, so you can actually get support. But the fact that Kellogg's, obviously a massive well-known brand, actually has done this, I think is great, because it helps hopefully lead the way for others to follow. But it's not all good. Or is it kind of like a question that, do we actually still need a women in protection network? Are we all good to go now, Emma? We've got more women in senior positions. Surely none of this sexism still happens. Ha 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 ha. Sadly, it does. You know, our members tell us that there are still issues within the workplace. And these headlines highlight that as well. So this one, so the Treasury Committee set up a work stream. They produced a report, Sexism in the City. And it found quite shocking results based on the research that it undertook. One of the things was that 70% of people that were whistleblowers in organisations highlighting some of the issues felt that they felt victimised, and many of them actually felt that they had no option but to resign. So after whistleblowing bad behaviour, they themselves felt that they had to leave. And that's a really poor position to be, as I'm sure you'll agree. 40% of female entrepreneurs report gender-based discrimination. It's far harder for women to get financial backing by setting up a business than it is for male counterparts. That's the kind of thing that needs to change, because obviously that's a blocker to career development for women. And then this one, Scottish Widows did a really bloody great thing a few months ago in line with International Women's Day, launching a TikTok campaign to help women think about their financial futures and their pension provision. And they targeted young women by doing a campaign on TikTok. Brilliant, you might think. They created a really nice little calculator to help women think about how much they were going to get when they retire. Oh, not as far as some people. So, this wording that you won't be able to read. So today, Scottish Widows disabled comments on their campaign. So it was all obviously on TikTok, loads of comments, because some users called for women to get a better job, or worse, it's not the geezer's fault that women want children. And that's why their pension is less. Great. So that just goes to show, I mean, that was obviously, you know, your average consumer on TikTok. But that just goes to show that, one, there is a real misconception about the gender pensions gap in the UK. And there is, you know, we talk a lot about the gender pay gap, but there's also a massive gender pensions gap that we need to consider as well. But also just some of the attitudes that we've got to overcome to actually change that. But hats off to Scott Wids, definitely have a look at that campaign. And, you know, we're going to be talking about financial futures later in the afternoon. Here are just some of the issues that are, I'm not going to go through all of them because they will be covered in the afternoon, well, in today's sessions. But there are some challenges that we've got to consider in terms of actually trying to improve diversity and inclusion in our market. The fact that women only make up 35% of senior roles. That is up 1% from last year. It was 34%. So it's moving in the right direction, but a bit blooming slowly. One of the things that needs to be highlighted, so that's kind of come on from the Women in Finance Charter, which some of you are signatories of. If you haven't heard of the Women in Finance Charter before, it's an initiative set up by the government for companies to actually set targets to actually improve the gender pay gap, but also improve the number of women in senior roles. Only about a third of companies last year actually hit their targets. So they're nearly there, but they hadn't quite managed it. But one of the things that is missing for me in that charter is that it's really looking at senior roles. It's not looking at women's roles sort of the next rung down. So actually, if somebody moves on out of one of those senior positions, have you got the next generation of talent to be able to move into those spaces? That's really where I think the charter could be improving. Part-time working, women are about 3 times more likely to be in a part-time job than men. That obviously has impact on career opportunities and certainly earnings opportunities. The one I wanted to highlight, though, is the one at the top, the unequal parental leave, because that's actually where men actually aren't as well off as women in a lot of cases. You know, women get far better parental leave typically than a man does. And even companies that have actually equalised it, and there are some, which is great, are men actually taking advantage of those opportunities, or do they feel worried and scared about doing so? I spoke at a conference a few years ago, and there was a lady in the audience, and she worked at Aviva, and they had just introduced an equal parental leave policy. And she commented that she was sitting alongside 2 of her male colleagues who were talking about it, and they were saying, well, this is all very well, it's great. But they were talking amongst themselves going, but is it going to affect my career prospects? Is it going to affect my pay? Should I do it or not? And you just think, this is what women have been facing for decades. And until that changes, until men feel able to take advantage of those opportunities, then it's going to be really challenging for women to get out of that whole kind of like negativity when it comes to actually balancing work and childcare. So we need to try and get to the place where actually everybody with children has an equal opportunity to be able to take the time off. And then you haven't got this potential bias against women who might be more likely to take time off, but we also need to make sure that, as I said, the opportunities are there for everybody. So I'm just going to finish with something because I love that statement. Aviva also last year did a gender balance in the workplace report. I'd recommend that you Google it, find it, read it. It was really, really insightful. But this statement really stood out for me because this, for me, is what the day should be all about. Achieving gender parity is up to all of us. We need to stop treating diversity as an initiative, but as a core part of the way we think and work. This can't just be a tick box exercise. This needs to be something that we all live and breathe. And allyship is so important. It's wonderful to see so many men in the room today here supporting and wanting to drive forward change themselves. And that's why we've got so many amazing men on our ambassador list as well. So it's about all of us working together to drive change. So I'm going to leave you with that. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us.